incredibly kind. So I can't do this while you're sharing, so I can go over to here and I can go over to here. And super. That's so kind, Christina. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. But more importantly, on behalf of the thousands of people that get to benefit from your hard work, thank you for taking Build Math Minds and doing the virtual summit and giving us all a platform for sharing some of our ideas. And so for all of you who are crazy enough to be taking some time out of your summer to participate in the virtual math summit, it's good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. It's so nice that I have no idea what time zone you're in or whether you are watching it during a normal time or a crazy time, but it really doesn't make any difference because most of us are all crazy. Most of us who would be participating in this already are well preparing for this upcoming school year and worrying about our kids and our leadership functions. And so I just want to add to your plate. I want to take an hour and share with you some practical strategies for making the case for mathematics coaches and for mathematical coaching, for the very simple reason that I think we are missing the opportunity to provide the kind of support that teachers so desperately need if we're going to come close to living up to our vision of teaching and learning mathematics. And so, the overview of this discussion is really very simple. These slides are posted at my website under presentation. These slides are also going to be part of the Virtual Math Summit site, and so that's really easy. I talk incredibly fast. People cannot possibly keep track, and so you get the slides, and you can print the slides out, and you can go back and use the slides. But my guiding belief for this discussion is that there simply is no way that we're going to meet our shared goal of ensuring that mathematics truly works for all students, all, not just some, unless we have coaching and unless we have collaborative structures. And it's the coaches that support the collaborative structures because classroom teachers are so busy. And the best collaborative structures, as I just said, are those that are supported and nurtured by coaches. And so my goal today is to bombard you with a set of ideas for making the case for mathematics coaches and coaching. If you do not have a coach, this is how we make the case. If you have a coach and the coach is not there enough, or the coach is trying to work in 4 schools, this will help you make the case. And so I remind you that a case is a bombardment of arguments. I remind you that in a debate, there is almost never just one argument or one point. I want to buy a car. All right. So you say to your significant other, you say to your parent, I want to buy a car. The question is why? Well, I want better gas mileage. Okay, fine, but well, no, the current car needs major repairs, and so I'd have to spend $1,000 on the car, and why would I do that if I can spend $3,000 on a down payment and get a new car? No, wait a second, there are new safety features that are available. That will make me and my kids safer. No, wait, I want satellite radio because I just need that, and it's the perk for all the time I spend in the car. Why, answer. Why, answer. And so I think I'm changing jobs. Convince me that I should. And you know that there better be a number of compelling arguments, or it's unlikely that you're going to convince someone else, let alone yourself. And so I believe that we desperately need mathematics coaches in every single school building in which mathematics is taught. I give up on one coach per school and argue if I have 2 days of effective coaching in every school so that a coach works in 2 different schools and spends Friday growing and sharing with the other coaches, then we have made a giant step forward. And so if I claim we need coaches, I better, like you, be in a position to make the case. And so I begin with what we know. I sit with an assistant superintendent. I sit and I say, so just stop and think about how we as a school district, we as schools, we as teachers are charged with making math work for a much greater proportion of students than we've ever done before. And we know we're not making adequate progress. We know no matter what measure we do, there are too many kids that leave each grade, each unit, each course and our school district underperforming. We also know that typical instruction, simple instructional practice of shut up, sit down, I will tell you, I will show you, and we will practice to get right answers is wonderful for about a third of the kids in a world that's saying that math's supposed to work for a minimum of 80% of the students. That is, we all know that lecture, mad minute, sprints, and worksheet heaven just doesn't measure up, and we know how common that is and how underperforming it is. We sit with a principal, we sit with the assistant superintendent, we go to the Board of Education and remind people that think about your own kids. To complicate matters, it's not just content, but today's world requires kids and our kids and your kids to reason, to solve problems, to construct viable arguments. That's right, the standards of mathematical practice, they're not words, they are giant steps forward and not easy to do. And of course, we all know, as I get sarcastic, that this gets incorporated into every mathematics lesson because the standards tell us to do it, and therefore we just do it. And we know that that means math classes are different. Math classes reflect a different set of instructional practices when we are doing problem solving and reasoning and constructing arguments. We then have these NCTM, mathematical teaching practices of alternative approaches and productive struggle and discourse and representations and I'm exhausted. And of course, we know that this too emerges from a 1 hour after school workshop. I mean, how stupid can we be? That we think that somehow the old mechanisms of professional development are going to help people change what they do in ways that really live up to what we claim we need to do. And so I remind you and I remind everyone when we make the case for coaching that simply put, this is different, this is difficult, this requires time, this requires risk-taking and nudging and cooperation and support. Where and how do we acknowledge that? We need to be honest, we need to acknowledge it. And so the questions that we ask our colleagues when we build this case are, don't you care? Don't you care about the fact that even our best teachers are struggling? Don't you care that in fact all teachers need support? Don't you care that in fact the status quo is not good enough? And you actually believe that we can respond and provide the necessary support by exhortation or mandate or generic coaching or the same old after-school professional development? And so, I mean, we know as a profession, we know as professionals that that's not going to work. And so the good news is that we know what it'll take. I mean, what's so great is that we know that we need to have a clear, detailed vision of teaching and learning mathematics that guides all professional discussion, all evaluation, all coaching, all collaborative visits. And there are too few places that have that vision written out in a way that is compelling and attended to. We know that we need to have high quality aligned common unit assessments because as important as the classroom daily formative assessment is, and as sort of important for certain people as the large high stakes state assessments are, it's the common high quality unit assessments that tell us that students are or are not learning what we know they need to learn. You all know that when we have collaborative structures with dedicated time and coaching to support the envisioning, the practicing, the feedback giving, that's how we raise quality. That's how we have an impact. And so I take a deep breath and say, that's my foundation for making the case. And so I say to you, practical strategy number one, lay out the case. Practical strategy number one, here it is. Make a logical, deductive argument for coaching and coaches based on the gap between what we know is happening in our classrooms and what we know from the Common Core and the standards for mathematical practice and the mathematical teaching practices needs to be happening. And I pause and say, that is coaching and coaches as a critical piece of moving from where we are, which is not good enough, and we all know it, to where we need to be, unless you're foolish enough to believe that all kids are being well served and everything is hunky-dory. What other strategy, what other initiative is going to have as much impact? And the answer is very, very few, if any at all. I have set the table, and you all know, however, right? Strategy one assumes logical arguments have weight. in a world where's logic? I mean, we've done such a terrible job of so much math for so many people that, well, logic, I don't believe in logic, and I believe in lies, and I believe in falsehoods, and I don't think that it's important and all that kind of stuff. Right? It assumes that solid reasoning can win the vote. I mean, that's the problem with teachers. They tend to be rational. Math teachers tend to be far too rational, and reasoning and logic doesn't work when people sit there and say harumph, harumph, because in the crazy political excuse-laden worlds in which we operate, sorry about the typo, in which we operate, we need about 10 more strategies. And so when we get the pushback, when we get the yeah, but, we have to say, I understand the yeah, but, so let's move on. Something else we all know but really act on is a very simple set of people. People won't do what they can't envision. We all know that. We know that people won't do and can't do what they don't believe. We know that people can't do what they don't understand. We know that people don't do well what isn't practiced. And we also know that practice without feedback results in very little change. And we know that doing any of this without collaboration means that it isn't very sustaining. I mean, those are simply truisms that every teacher who says, I'm working my tail off, I care about kids, but I don't have enough answers. I don't have opportunities to grow my knowledge and experience base. And so I remind people that those things just can't get addressed in a typical no coach, overburdened, administrator-led schools. And if we want people to be able to envision a classroom that we believe kids deserve, if we want to change beliefs, if we want people to understand the math that they were never given an opportunity to understand, if we want to give people feedback on their practice and we want to do it collaboratively, then every one of us understands that practice strategy number 2 is to remind people what it takes to change beliefs and practices. And there it is. At its core, our job as professionals is to help each other envision, change beliefs, understand, practice, receive feedback, and collaborate. How nice. Well, who's going to do it? We all know that no one is better equipped to be able to do that than a coach, than a well-trained coach. Good. 2 down. Let's go. Let's stipulate that most of what passes for professional development in our business is pathetic. I mean, we all know that most of the time it doesn't change our knowledge, it doesn't change our behavior, and therefore it has no impact on student achievement. You don't believe that? Think about the pile of workshop handouts gathering dust on the file cabinet in the back of every one of our rooms. Most professional development, I call it pathetic, but honestly, we walk out and acknowledge that it sucks, that it doesn't meet our needs, and it is not presented in ways that give us the opportunity to practice, to grow, to try things out. So why the heck do we keep doing it? Why do we spend all the money on professional development that we know has no impact when what we know couldn't be clearer? And so I've been using this slide more and more after I teach a halfway decent lesson, after I observe a great lesson, after I share some lessons. And what happens is great teaching comes down to a clarity of our goals. Not lesson 4.5, not pages 214 to 217, but a clear student-friendly goal. Clarity of quality is about, there needs to be a context as opposed to just naked math. There need to be rich tasks, not exercises. We need to have focused, intentional questions, not a bunch of punting. We know that quality means opportunities for discourse, not just telling. We know that gradual release or gradual reveal of problems and not just dumping 6 sentences on kids and a completed graph when in fact we can gradually reveal it. We know that multiple representations as opposed to just the one way to picture it, alternative approaches, not just the one right way, are the elements that make fundamental differences in students' lives and student learning. It's what all of us say the very best teachers we ever had did. We know that it's about making sense and not just lecturing at students. And we know that it's about gathering evidence. And so, yeah, I've blended the mathematical teaching practices with this notion of how you possibly get those elements of quality in every mathematics lesson without coaching, without support, without some assistance, without